Oh no, you can see
You're
my
doxing
server.
everybody.
You can see my server.
Okay.
No.
Hello, everybody. In the space that never dies, we will be your travel guides. It's time for internet with your hosts, Eli and Munii.
Hey, that's me.
And today, I last minute thought of a topic because I'm hosting again for this week before I go on my vacation for 3 weeks, where Eli will be hosting 2 streams on his own with some guests that I'm not sure if he has figured that out yet.
I'm managing, trying to figure out who can join me.
Moving on, what is our topic today? It is how do I become a VTuber? So Eli, how long have you been a VTuber for?
So I didn't get my model, and so it took like 6 months to draw, and then getting the person to rig it, it was probably like 6.5 months.
Yeah.
And for that 6.5 months, I went back and forth between a PNG and the cat model, and that's ironically how I met Mooney too.
But for anybody that's curious how long I've been a VTuber for, I started VTubing officially, I think, I want to say August or September of 2021. Yeah, I started off with a Vroid model. I had actually originally had purchased my model design and art, I believe, way before I started streaming. I purchased my model art around the early of 2021 because it was going to take a while and I just wanted to start streaming. I decided to just use a VROID model temporarily before I'm moving on to my model. This is our expert opinions on how to start becoming VTubers because I get this question quite a lot, especially when I'm streaming. I'm honestly very open when it comes to talking about the costs that go into it or like things that you need to know if you are interested in either like applying for like companies or groups or whatever. So the first things first is something I want to talk about with everybody that wants to start streaming just in general is think of your budget. How much are you willing to spend on supposedly a hobby? And the reason why I say that it's going to be a hobby is because streaming is not a sustainable form of income unless you get extremely lucky.
Extremely
Or
lucky, or like you eventually like are at it for long enough to get that money back.
yes, exactly. Don't ever go into streaming expecting to make an income, at least immediately. I'm sorry. I'm sorry who has to hear this from me, of all people, who barely has a following. The likely chance of you making a decent income, like a decent income from streaming, is incredibly low. Like it's kind of like a 1 in a million. Because it's not to say that you can't get to that level, it's just something you have to really be willing to work for and have a lot of thankless hours. So it's not to say that, like, you know, just because one person doesn't find you entertaining, no one finds it entertaining. It's just that this is a very slow process. And if you're not willing to put in the time or the effort that takes in order to become quote unquote a professional streamer, I'm sorry, this is not the career for you.
Yeah, like in my experience so far, I didn't start taking streaming very much seriously until pretty much I got my VTuber model, which was about like 4 months ago.
Mm.
And I've been extremely lucky with meeting a lot of cool people that like in turn help me blow up, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not to say like I'm a huge streamer, but like within 4 months I went from like 30 followers to like
Mm-hmm.
150,
Mm-hmm.
and then also getting affiliate,
Yeah.
and like that to me is mind blowing. Like
Yeah.
that's a huge thing in just 4 months. My big
Yeah.
day is like a follower a week. Like
Yeah. There are a couple of reasons why some people may blow up immediately. One of them is definitely connection, so you know somebody. And what I mean by knowing somebody, that can branch into multiple different subjects, which I can definitely cover for you guys, especially because there's been a lot of hot topics about, like, you're only popular because, like, you have a really good, like, VTuber mama. And another reason could be memes, essentially. You're very good at memeing, and you made it. You blew up
yeah.
that way, yeah.
There's like another one where it's like you're only popular because you're finding like the quote unquote right groups, where it's like you got to collab with them repeatedly,
Yeah.
and it's like their following goes
Yeah.
into you.
That's
But like,
part of the whole like somebody, I feel, like camp.
yeah, but it's also I feel like that's hugely discrediting the fact that like if you're able to pull like a viewer from someone you're collabing with,
Mm.
that's kind of like if they like you enough to like go and watch your content, I'm pretty sure they like you for you know?
Yeah. I mean,
Like, I feel like that's
there are different types of followers out there, but like definitely there's that. So like I would say like knowing somebody becoming a meme or going viral, but usually becoming a meme is the viral part. You know what I mean? So those are the
yeah.
two ways to actually like get those really big breakthroughs. I think in quote unquote entertainment, because at the heart of it, VTubing is just another form of entertainment, especially for streaming.
That's usually it. Just like,
Mm.
dude, because there's, at least to me, what I noticed that there's a bunch of different versions of streaming. I guess like that's the best way I could put it.
So if you don't have connections, and unfortunately you haven't had your viral slash meme moment, the chances of you blowing up in some sort of way is very unlikely. You can clearly see that there's like some growth in like when I did some things, and then there are like times where even though I'm doing the same thing, there be barely anybody who watches me. So again, streaming in general is a very thankless but can be a very fun hobby. And I want to say it's a hobby. Please don't go into this thinking like, oh yeah, I'm
It's not. It's
gonna be a
definitely
next
not gonna
Moist
be.
Critical.
It's definitely not gonna be a job unless you've been streaming for like 9 years.
Yes.
You can't go in expecting like, oh, I'm gonna blow up in like a year and a half, and then like this whole thing. Like that's just like you're just designed for failure at that point. As much as I would love for streaming to be my career, it's not realistic
Yeah.
within the next like 4 years.
Yeah.
So if you like are consistent with it and you're not a a bish basically,
Yeah.
and you just like are able to make friends, I'm sure
Yeah.
that like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like you can stream for like 3 years, but if you're doing it wrong, it's like you don't really, nothing's really gonna happen. But if you eventually like find your formula, I guess, like what you enjoy doing and what people enjoy watching you do,
Mm.
then that's like your kind of you're in like way in, I guess.
Yeah. There's some truth to what Eli says, is that if you keep grinding and you keep streaming every single day and kind of like developing your own community, that you'll grow. That is partially true. And the reason why I say that, you can actually be streaming for years and years and not grow at all. And there are reasons for it. You're going to hear this from a lot of streamers who will give you advice, like especially the bigger streamers that get big for a reason. And the reason is if you're not entertaining, you're not going to grow. And what is that definition?
There is no exact term of being entertaining, because like everybody in their own way you have some way to entertain someone, because if you didn't, you wouldn't have any friends. If you have friends, you're entertaining in some way,
But
right?
what if I have no friends, Eli?
If you have no friends, then you're a piece of shit, probably. Like,
That's okay. That's not entirely true. But
not entirely true,
it
but
is
you-
kind of like sometimes it is a self review of like how do you treat people and how do you treat other. So usually, if you are an asshole, it kind of does translate to other aspects of your life. Yes, there are 100% people who are going to love different types of content. Some people like watching angry streamers, like Eli when he gets really angry during League, for example.
we did not talk about that.
Different content works for different folks, but one thing I will say that is very consistent in terms of people not enjoying content is if somebody tries to interact with you and you don't respond.
Yeah, that's very much like a deal breaker for a lot of people, where it's
Yeah.
like if you try to interact with someone and they just like either ignore it. Like for
Yeah.
bigger streamers, it's more understandable because
There's
like,
just way
so
too
much
many
happening
people. Yeah.
every other time, where it's like if you're just a small streamer with like one person in your chat and they're trying to talk with you and you're just ignoring it and just playing the game, like at some point that person's gonna be like, bro, come on, like I'm trying to asking how your day
Yeah,
is.
I have gone into those streams and I tried to usually talking and going like, hey, how's it going? Like, how's the stream going? You know, and I talk for a bit, and like I see how the vibe is. And they're really receptive of my messages, especially if chat's essentially, I want to say, like, it's not necessarily dead, but like it's kind of really quiet. Then you kind of want to be like acknowledged us a little bit. But if they're kind of like, oh, hi, and then they just drop it, then you kind of feel a bit disheartened, I think is the correct word for it. Because they're going like, oh, yeah, I'm not acknowledged. They don't really care that I'm here. Why should I stick around? Is kind of type of thing. I know that, you know, at the end of the day, you should be streaming for yourself. But if you are just playing a game and not really talking to chat, and the thing is that you have to remember, guys, is when you're streaming for people. What's the point of you streaming and not talking or doing anything to entertain and just playing the game but not streaming it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can have a test of that. I used to have that problem a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Before streaming, I was used to just like sitting down and focusing on the game.
Yeah.
And like the few times someone would like come in, they would be there for like maybe 30 seconds,
Yeah.
realize I'm not saying anything, and then
Yeah.
like just dip. Because like if I'm not saying anything, I'm just letting the gameplay happen. Unless like I'm a speedrunner or like top
Yeah,
5
yeah.
in the game, like I'm not offering much compared to
Yeah.
someone else. Because like in the end of the day, you kind of want to be a personality.
You have to
That's
like contribute something, and I agree with you. 100% agree with you. If you're watching a person and they're trying to complete this challenge, you're a little bit more empathetic, I guess, right? Because you sit there going like, okay, this is really cool, right? I'm kind of watching this person doing this challenge, or maybe they're teaching people these techniques and stuff like that, or maybe they're filming for a YouTube video, because there are people who do make content without actually speaking. That is 100% a type of genre that people do like. That is great for YouTube content. Because people do prefer that. I would find, because there's a little bit less interpersonal type of kind of a relationship. But when it comes to like streaming, like Twitch, or even for our YouTube lives, right? Again, what is the point of going live if you're not going to interact with the audience for a majority of the content makers that are out there, right?
At the end, if you're doing that, it's pretty much just a live YouTube video. Because in YouTube videos, you can't interact with your chat unless you're doing like space with Markiplier.
Yeah, but
like
even then, the most popular Let's Players, like you look at Jacksepticeye, you look at Markiplier, they still talk to you as if you were there with them playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're
Or like
still
they react and have a bunch of like a lot of people get on old Markiplier by having like really over exaggerated reactions.
yeah.
But like he's doing that, one, for entertainment, and two, so that like if there's probably someone out there that would react to it
Yeah.
that way.
At the end of the day, there is a reason why people enjoy watching their content, you know, and it's because they're contributing to the gameplay. If you take away the gameplay of it, is there still content in their videos? And the answer is yes, at the heart of it.
Yeah.
That's something that you should think about, actually, before you start becoming a streamer, I think. This is not to say that if you're a new streamer, you shouldn't just try to like stream. It's something to think about, that just because you play a video game, regardless if you do well or not, that doesn't equal follows or views necessarily.
Like, let's say someone was gonna, like, for example, goes on the Twitch and they're like, oh, I'm gonna watch this Dead Space streamer, right? And if that Dead Space streamer isn't saying nothing, has no reaction, isn't interacting,
Isn't even good at the game.
it's like mediocre at the game, what's the difference between them playing it and the viewer playing it?
Yeah.
Because like you gotta be different enough from your audience
Yeah.
to give them a reason to watch you. If you're not doing anything different, if you're just being like okay at everything, then it's just like, why don't they just sit back and play the game? They're watching you to have a new experience.
And maybe the other reason that people will come visit your podcast or come visit your channel is because to see how you're interacting with people, right? And that's another form of entertainment. You don't necessarily have to interact with chat, but you have to contribute something, I believe. I forgot to ask this question earlier. Eli, how much have you spent on your setup?
Okay.
What do you think is the bare minimum you would need in order to start streaming, I think, now that we beat the people
So-
down?
So if you're starting from nothing, you don't have a monitor, you don't have a PC, you don't have nothing, right? I have a pre-built PC, and I know like, oh, that's bad or whatever, right?
That's not bad.
I'm lucky enough to have this PC be able to play 98% of the games. It just sucks that the 2% of games I can't play includes a Dead Space remake, which is this PC was about like I think $900. And I upgraded the RAM, which is the one thing that was like off about it. And the RAM itself was about 85, so about 985 for like a good PC that's gonna last me.
Yeah.
And then I play on my TV. If we're going with that, this TV was about like 400, cheaper than a monitor, cheaper than most.
But it's dual
TVs
use though, because you can use it for other stuff other than just.
Yeah. Like you can use it for more than just a PC. Like I have my PS4 hooked up to it. I have a game capture, so I can do all that stuff.
You've spent quite a bit of money investing in your streaming setup. We'll just say.
Just about this, and that's not even including like the model and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's like if you're going into just being a VTuber, the character itself and the rigging of it. I'm lucky enough to have a girlfriend that draws very well.
Yeah.
And so she draws my stuff, and I guess I pay her back by taking her on dates. She says it's even. I don't think so. Complicating part is like the rigging, and like I have to call someone out to do it for rigging, because riggings can go up to like $250.
$250, that's real cheap.
Just because it's cheap, don't think it's like $5.
Yeah,
it's like cheap end is like 100, 150 to like 200.
Yeah.
That's the kind of cheap.
Yeah. If you guys want to know how much I've spent, like let's say on my streaming setup, for all intents and purposes, you can probably hear the sound quality difference between Eli and I. Eli uses a headset mic. I use an XLR mic. So what an XLR mic is one where you require to use a sound interface. And what a sound interface does is that it allows you to play it onto your computer. Regardless, I'm not a sound designer, so I can't give you a very good example of it. Part of the reason why I have some more expensive equipment is because I'm trying to also be a voice actress eventually in the future. I'm trying to invest in my future. Another thing to note is I'm also a full-time office worker. Unlike Eli, I have a little bit more money to spare. I have probably spent $3,000 to $5,000 on my setup. Probably more, honestly. For me, I have a custom-built PC that I actually need to upgrade, but parts of it were donated by my brother, so I could cut down the cost. And then I also have my XLR mic, which is actually a cheaper end mic, if I had to be completely honest. I have my drawing monitor that also acts as a second monitor. I have my extra wide monitor as well. And then I have my VTuber model. I would say $5K is like on the very cheaper end, but the real question is, do you need to spend as much money as, say, Munii? And the answer is no. You can probably use a shitty laptop. The most important thing when it comes to streaming at the end of the day is the ability to stream and possibly a decent mic. Honestly, just use a PNG image and you'd be fine. You can produce content however you want, and there have been plenty of people who start off with just a laptop, a mic, and a picture on their screen just to represent them. Streaming isn't really a contest and who can spend the most money.
As much as I'm making it sound like a big deal of like you need to spend money on it, you can have the best setup in the world, you can have the best VTuber in the world, you can have everything paid for, you can pay billions on quadrillions of money. If you're not producing content that someone will watch, it doesn't matter. People will watch you if you're funny or if you can produce content someone likes, even if you have the worst setup imaginable.
Yes.
Like, you guys hear my mic, right? It is not the best, but I still have people that thankfully watch me.
We invested in different areas that we think is best for our community or best for what we want and or can afford. I can afford a bit more as a full-time worker, whereas Eli, it's not really worth of an investment for him to spend like thousands of dollars on a setup while going to college. I will say that, like, again, for the bare minimum of becoming a VTuber, it is not necessarily a standard to have a moving model.
I used to be a PNG tuber. It was my model, and whenever I talked, the mouth opened, and that was it.
And there are definitely a lot of resources that people can use, like VTube, which does the reactive PNG. There are a lot of free models out there for people to use if they really want to have a moving model. It's available for people. Will there be other people who may have your model? Yes, that's very possible. There are always going to be resources for the cheaper spectrum. There are so many ways you can avoid spending a lot of money.
If you're using, like, let's say, like the cat model, right? Like the cat model that's given for free that you can use.
Yeah.
I mean, shit, I was using the cat model for like a good before I had this one. You can add your own personality to it by giving it like hats and stuff like that.
Yeah. There is a nice aspect of having like a completely custom model that no one else will have, or theoretically have. Some people will have very similar ideas and very similar designs. I guess if you want to have like to stand out and not look like everybody else, yeah, you do have to pay for that, unfortunately. But if you are broke and can't afford it, then, you know, just stick with what is free and available. And there are some custom options that are still free. But I will say for artists especially, you want to read their terms and conditions, because there'll be some artists that will be like, you are allowed to stream with this model, but you're not allowed to commercialize with it. That could really hurt you in the future, because if you are a streamer, eventually you would want to be able to get advertisements, or you want to eventually get some money off of it. Now, if there's a clause in your contract that says you cannot commercialize, that can actually affect your streaming. What I will say for anybody that's even starting to think about PNG tubing is be very sure the art that you're using says that it is okay for you to use, because you can get into legal issues, especially if you start profiting off of that image.
It's also the same with, like, say you have someone drawing like a fan art of you, and then you want to adapt that fan art in your own way.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it's still technically copyright, because it's like 90% the original work, and it's just inspired, unless they give you the official right, like saying like, oh yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. I'm doing this for fun.
But that's going into a completely different topic. Unless we wanted to go the legalities of VTubing. The most important thing for people to know is just you always want to make sure you have the right permissions before using free images or free VTuber models. Trying to go back to how to become a VTuber, there's one thing that probably a lot of people have thought about, and that is, if you're a VTuber, do you have to know or like corporate VTubers? And what's your opinion on that, Eli?
As someone who knows zero corporate VTubers, no, you do not need to know a single person. You do not have to know anybody. You can just say screw it, and I'm gonna be a character. Literally, quite literally what I did. I want to say no with like an asterisk. You don't have to know corporate VTubers. Like, I don't know any VTuber that is a part of a corporate other than like what Munii's told me. It's good to know that they exist. I guess, like, not really opportunities. I mean, it could be future opportunities if you want to be a part of a corporate, but it's also knowing that it's out there, and like, if you're gonna do collabs with someone, and if they're like, oh, I had to talk with my corporate about this, that, like, there's a lot of processes that come into, especially people that are bigger.
Yeah.
Like, it's just what it is.
You don't necessarily need to know who's in a corporate VTubing company. It's good knowledge to know, because it's just like saying, like, you need to know all these big name streamers. No, you don't. You don't need to know anything or any shit, but you do. But I do think there are some things you should know when joining the VTuber space. Definitely knowing the difference between what a corporate VTuber is, a group of VTuber, or an indie VTuber is very useful information. Corporate, again, being somebody who's working for an entertainment company. An indie group usually don't pay their talents or have like a money agreement between their talents, just like a group of friends usually, and they
like a
have
content house.
Yeah, kind of like that. Then there is the indies, where they're usually by themselves, like what we are. These are like kind of the three types of different types of VTubing in a way. Another things I would probably say is good to know is knowing some idle terms like graduation. Eli didn't know what graduation meant. Zetsudan, basically a just chatting stream. Past life, which means reference to their old streaming identity usually, or their old identity that they had on the internet. Those are terms that are useful to know. You don't have to know all these VTuber terms. A lot of VTubing honestly does come from Japan, or what the modern version of VTubing is. Basically, the key thing is, do you need to know the history of VTubing in order to be a VTuber? The answer is no. You don't need to know. But I would definitely say that there are some like respect systems in the VTubing community to be aware of. This is just a general statement. Don't be an asshole. I think people feel like just because you're behind a screen that nothing can hurt you, but damn,
Dude,
there's
okay.
drama like every week.
There's one thing that a lot of people need to understand. Just because you're behind a screen, whether it be in video games, whether it be in streaming or whatever, there is an easy way for anyone to find you. It is not
Yeah.
hard. If you think you can talk like big game into like really crazy fandoms, they're gonna find you.
I believe no one deserves death threats. I think everyone deserves like a level of respect, regardless
Yeah.
of bad opinions. I'll say.
That a bad opinion does not deserve death threats.
Yes.
There's very little things that deserve death threats.
When it comes to VTubing, especially, I think people tend to forget that just because they have like a presence online, it doesn't mean that they're perfect. Unfortunately, and everyone's going to have different beliefs, and it's not that to say that you should be fine with it. I'm just going to say this out there: everyone's favorite's going to be problematic in some sort of way.
There's gonna be some way where
You're going to be disappointed. This is why you never meet your heroes. Now, when you're starting out as a VTuber, no one's going to really care what you do or say, but I will say that keeping yourself clean of drama, keeping yourself away from deeply problematic topics, probably a good start. Especially for my experience creating content, there are times where I have to take a step back and I sit there going like, did I say something that could be considered problematic?
I know I have many of those moments because I feel like I say a lot of outlandish stuff, and I'm pretty sure the people that watch me get that a lot of the stuff I say I either don't mean or I like they get that I'm playing a character for the most part, but there's still the chance that someone won't. There's also the idea that like if someone does say like, hey man, what do you mean by that? When they question you on it, how you respond. You could easily just be like, it meant nothing. Look at you, emotional little babu. Why are you on the internet? No, that's bad. Like sit down was like, hey, it was just like something I said. I didn't think it mattered too much. I thought it was funny.
I would have to say is that words do matter, and I think for anybody that wants to be a streamer, to a certain extent, you do have to think of future problems that may occur if you say deeply problematic things, because it can bite you in the ass later.
Yeah, and it's also the fact of how you respond to it, because there's a lot of times where you don't have to respond. The best way, if people are like just critiquing you, being like, oh man, why'd you do that, but like you're known as someone that just says stuff randomly and it's funny, you don't have to respond to that. Like that's the time where you don't. But like if someone is like calling you out, being like, dude, you can't say that stuff this specific time, you can't be saying that out loud, then that's when you're like, all right, like I apologize for that time, and you leave it there, because there are people out there that just try to get you to respond to everything too. Like not every call out is because you're saying something problematic. They're probably just being like, that sounds a bit off, get them.
Because like the VTubing world and like the streamer world is very, very interesting when it comes to anything that's controversial. The one thing I would definitely say is that people do 100%, they will forget about the hot topics within a week most of the time. I can remember some very controversial like things that I won't necessarily bring up what they were. You see that they did something very problematic. The next week they are fine. Like they were canceled one week and then now everyone's just like, oh, but look at their cute widow model, So a lot of it comes down to becoming a VTuber or just becoming a streamer just in general, is that the only main difference is whether or not you want to use a character for your image as opposed to using your webcam. I guess we never really talked about it, but why did you choose to become a VTuber instead of becoming a webcam streamer?
For me specifically, I have a very outward personality to where it would be easier for me to play a character than for me to be myself. Because if like being myself, I feel like it would give myself way too much anxiety and put too much weight on my shoulders. But I feel like if I'm playing a character, that weight is kind of lifted because I know it's a character. Like even though like Eli guy is kind of close to who I actually am, there's different parts that I over exaggerate. There are times where it's not how I respond to things, but I do it for entertainment, and me
Mhm.
knowing that I'm playing a character, I know that it's fine.
Yeah.
As opposed to like if I was myself, I would if I've said something about like opinion, like if I said my hero is mid, I would be like I would like wake up at 12 and be like, oh my god, someone's gonna call me out because I said this. Oh,
Mhm.
as opposed to like if someone called me out for that now, I'd be like, loser's gonna hate, you know? I feel like it's just better for me to be playing a character
Okay.
than for me to be myself.
I'm similar and also the opposite somehow from you. The reason why I chose VTubing over webcam streaming, and I have considered webcam streaming for a very long time, the reason why I wanted to start streaming was because I wanted to work on becoming a voice actress. When I had originally saw like the Hollow Live auditions, I think I was like sitting there going like, oh, this is like maybe like this would be the perfect route for me to do something, I guess, like go towards that career. Thanks to 2020, basically lost all confidence to actually, I guess, perform and stuff like that. Becoming a VTuber, for me at least, like the things that it has given to me is that it actually did the opposite of what you were saying, like putting on a character. It actually let me be myself more. I'm a deeply insecure person, so becoming a VTuber actually has given me the ability to truly be myself in a sense and be okay with who I am as a personality without the fear of, like, I guess, rejection. Because who's gonna reject an anime girl? Any last messages you want to say to anybody who's thinking about becoming a VTuber in the future?
My last comment is do not be afraid. Like I know a lot of the stuff we were saying, like how with doxing and stuff like that, or like needing to know information, may like have persuaded some people to not get into it. If you're thinking about it or have like a small inkling about it,
Mm.
just dive in. Like just find yourself PNG or like something you could use, or you could use a default cat model. Get used to the movement and get to entertaining. Entertain yourself, and if you entertain yourself, you're entertaining someone.
Yes.
One thing I will say is just don't be a dick. It's not that hard. Even though you're a cat model, people will find you
Yeah,
and they will pepper spray you.
yeah, even if you play a character, don't be an asshole. I don't care if it's like, oh, it's the character to be an asshole. I don't care.
No, like there's a difference between the character being an asshole and you being an asshole. Cause like if your character is being an asshole, then you can easily just be like, all right, sidebar, like this is not how I feel, and then just be like, all right, in the sidebar, and just go back to
Yes.
telling everyone to shut up.
What advice I would give to people if they are interested in becoming a VTuber? Definitely, it would be. I agree with Eli. Just jump into it and don't be afraid about doing it. I've been thinking about streaming, I want to say, for over 5 years. I didn't do it because I was afraid. And VTubing gave me the ability to do what I wanted to try doing for 5 years, right? So
Yeah,
it's definitely a great opportunity for people who are fearful, especially of showing their face or are deeply insecure. I would say if you are a young content creator and you want to be a content creator and like this is something that you really want to do, I don't want to stomp on that dream, but I would say is have that discussion with your parents, if especially if they are receptive to it. Do not steal money from your parents just to become a VTuber. Don't.
don't do
Don't
that.
do
Don't
that.
steal money from your parents. Period. Honestly,
But have
'cause,
that discussion with your parents and being like, hey, I really want to try to do this. And if they're receptive to it, they can help moderate your streams and they can help be there to make things more appropriate, is what I'm saying. And I do feel that parents, especially with younger creators, need to be more involved, not with money per se. They need to be aware of what their kids do on the internet.
if you're young enough to where you're still in your parents' care, just like let them know first. I have this dream. They'll probably tell you, hey, you're not ready for this. Like I told my mom that when I was 10, and she was like, no. And
Hells
like,
no.
yeah, like she
I
didn't.
can
She's not really.
imagine.
She's not too much into like internet stuff. Like she like goes on Facebook and stuff, but
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
not like she doesn't watch streams and stuff.
Yeah.
But she
She already saw the
knew
dangers,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah, she knew enough that like a 10-year-old boy playing Call of Duty yelling the N-word or like
That's
telling
good. That
like
can ruin
everybody
your
ass.
career, yeah.
Yeah, calling everybody ass, being like, no, that's not gonna be good.
You have to be careful. And if you're a minor, just don't interact with adult content. You are potentially putting yourself in danger of
In
adults
a lot of,
who are willing to step over those boundaries.
if you're not 18 going into any 18 plus anything, you are setting yourself up to be ruined in any way.
Yeah.
Like, does not matter. Even if it's like just a server that you're in that just tells jokes. Like if it's just like a unhinged joking server, you're setting yourself up to see something you might not want to.
There's a reason why a lot of streamers will say no minors or don't mention age. As much as I want to be welcoming to everybody of all ages, I'm gonna slip up and say things that probably young, like minors, should not hear. It's complicated when it comes to content creation, especially, but I will say that, I don't want to discourage kids from not trying to be a content creator because it does pay off, honestly, because like the younger you are starting off with content creation, like the more like you kind of like learn. But there are too many kids out there that start content creation so young and then they get it taken advantage of, or they make a lot of bad decisions. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Internet. We hope that you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to shoot it down below. We live stream our show bi-weekly on every second and last Monday of each month, with our recordings being released a week and 2 days after on YouTube and SoundCloud. Check our socials if you'd like to connect with us, and we'll see you next time on the Internet. Bye-bye!
Bye bye.